Hey folks, this is Matt once again, and welcome to October, the month of October, where, like I said, I was going to start reviewing some of the classic Universal Monster movies. This is a Blu-ray set that my good friend Michael King got me for my birthday, which I really appreciated. And of course, this is about the 1931 film Dracula, directed by Tod Browning, and of course starring Bela Lugosi. And by this time, I've been watching quite a few of these movies and been really getting into it. Now, right off the bat, if you are a fan of Universal Monster movies but you don't own any of them, if you want them on Blu-ray, this is probably the best set to get because this has all these 8 films. But if you don't care about that and you're fine with a DVD, they did release a 30 film pack. I think it was fairly recently. And has not only these 8 films, but all the other films, the sequels to these: Son of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, Ghost of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man Returns, all that. And that's a set I would like to get one day. It's 80 some bucks. I would like to get that one day to check out all the sequels to these films. I mean, this has one sequel, Bride of Frankenstein. But I'm just letting people know, in case if you are fans of Universal Monster movies, that is available out there. Now, I remember seeing a couple Universal Monster movies way back in the day on cable, on actually Turner Classic Movies. Yes, I did used to watch a little bit of Turner Classic Movies. And I believe it's Turner Classic Movies where I found some of the films I really enjoy. For example, 2001: A Space Odyssey and its sequel, 2010. The original Rollerball with James Caan. Certain films like that, which I really enjoy, those movies. And it was in October. I can't remember the exact year. It was quite a long time ago. Quite a long time ago. And it was October, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't seen these movies, so let me give it a look. And it was nighttime, and I remember enjoying these films. At least the ones I saw. I only saw a couple of them. I didn't see all of them. I only saw a couple. And one of them I remember was Dracula. Now, before I get into review, a little bit of history on Dracula. Now, Universal, at this time, they had done horror films, for example, specifically with Lon Chaney Sr. Now, I have not seen his films like Hunchback of Notre Dame. I thought it was Notre Dame, but I've heard it pronounced Notre Dame, Hunchback of Notre Dame. Also, The Phantom of the Opera from 1925, and then I think they did a reissue, revise, some type of thing in 1929, 1930. I would like to get those one day and give those a watch. Because, you know, they're classics. I've heard so much stuff about them. If you're a fan of The Phantom of the Opera, I believe there's a DVD. I put it on my wish list because it has all the versions on there, the both versions. I want to pick them up one day too, when money grows on trees. I only mention that in case people are fans of it. There are versions available out there, because I know sometimes they were in public domain, it seemed like, but there are better versions, DVDs, things like that out there available for people to check out. But like I said, Lon Chaney Sr., the man of 1,000 faces, he had done a lot of films that, and quite a few of them were successful. As okay, if it's horror, it's got to star Lon Chaney Sr. Now, at this time, they weren't sure on making Dracula into a film because, granted, Hunchback of Notre Dame and Phantom of the Opera were very successful. They still weren't sure about doing Dracula. Of course, Bram Stoker, and then it was a Broadway. It was on the stage, which Bela Lugosi actually played Dracula on stage. And they weren't sure because they thought audiences wouldn't buy it, or audiences would be too disgusted with it. Which, when you see the film, you're like, what the hell were they talking about? But you understand, this is the 30s, the Great Depression, all sorts of things. And I believe this actually helped the studio. It was like a film that really helped them that year during, Great Depression. But they weren't sure, and in fact, the guy who headed Universal, Carl Laemmle Sr., he wasn't really a fan of horror films. He just did those others because Lon Chaney Sr. could pull in money. And they said, fine, if you want to. It was Carl Laemmle Jr. who really liked horror, really wanted to do horror. Carl Laemmle Jr. said, hey, this could really work. And his dad said, okay, it has to star Lon Chaney Sr. At this time, he was just named Lon Chaney, because at this time, no one knew who Lon Chaney Jr. was. In fact, I'm not even sure if at this time, I think he was named Claude Chaney or something like that, if he even changed his name to Jr. But anyway, they won Lon Chaney, Man of a Thousand Faces. Tod Browning, who directed this film, he had worked with Lon Chaney quite a few times. So it's like, okay, they're going to work again. And then some stuff, he didn't want to do a talkie because he was a silent film guy. Then, okay, I'm going to do a talkie, but it's going to be this film. I think it's called The Unholy Three. I mean, to be honest, I've seen clips, but I haven't seen any of Lon Chaney Sr.'s films. If there was a collection, I don't know if there is, of all of his films. But anyway, by the time finally he might do Dracula, he was getting ready. They wanted to sign him to a 3-picture deal. One of them involved this film, and one of them involved Return of the Phantom, or Return of the Opera. As a Return of the Phantom, I believe it was called. It was a sequel to the Phantom of the Opera. And I know at this time he had actually, Lon Chaney had played a vampire before in a film called London After Midnight, which unfortunately I think is one of those films that is lost. Like London After Midnight was a film where Lon Chaney had these really sharp teeth, really creepy looking teeth. And again, I believe it's a lost film. I think he was in some kind of fire and the print got burned, and it's just one of those films that got lost because of that. But before Lon Chaney did Dracula, he got cancer and he passed away. So they're like, well, who are we going to get for Dracula? And Bela Lugosi was pretty much a last choice. They didn't want Bela Lugosi. Just like, we don't want the guy, who's Bela Lugosi? Okay, he played him on stage, but we don't want the guy who played him on stage. How about this guy, but this guy? And again, Bela Lugosi was the last choice. And pretty much they got him, and in fact, they got him for cheap. Like, they said, fine, because Bela Lugosi really wanted to play Dracula in a movie. Say, hey, I can do this. So they said, fine, you can do the role, but we don't pay you shit pay. In fact, some other guy, I forget, David Manners, as Harker, I believe that was the character's name, who was, I'll say it, he was shit in this movie. He was just a forgettable nothing in this movie. He got paid more than Bela Lugosi, and I'm like, that's really shitty of Universal, because Bela Lugosi made the movie. This became a huge hit, and without Dracula, you would not get Frankenstein, and without that, you wouldn't get all of the Universal monster movies that we know to this day. But Bela Lugosi's like, okay, fine. And he did this film. Tod Browning, he went on to do a couple more films. I know he did a film called Freaks, which I've heard of Freaks. I haven't seen Freaks. That's another one I would like to get one day and check out, because I've heard that's a pretty fucked up movie. And Freaks, pretty much, it was so fucked up for people, at least for people back in the 30s, that not only did it bomb, but it kind of killed his career. He only did a couple more films, and then he retired. Trying to think. And Bela Lugosi, he went on to do Frankenstein. Oh, not really. Now, I'll talk about that whole thing. Well, fine, I'll talk about it now. Real quickly, I'll mention again when I talk about Frankenstein, which should be a review you see after this. There's two different stories. Either they show Bela Lugosi a script of Frankenstein in which the monster was just a monster. It had none of the sympathetic qualities. It was just a killer. And that they did a test, and there was another director named Flory, and that when they went in and looked at it, they laughed their asses off at Bela Lugosi. And I've heard different accounts. Like, that's the thing, everyone says something different. Someone says that they laughed their asses off, and that the maker was kind of like Boris Karloff became. Others say that it was different. In fact, there's a poster that says Bela Lugosi, and you can tell that it's a painting, but the look of the monster looks different. Of course, the other story is Bela Lugosi said no, because after Dracula, he didn't want to just play a mute monster. So either he did say no, which was a big mistake, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe he just wasn't fit for the part, and Boris Karloff played him. Which he actually did play the Frankenstein. I'll talk about that in Frankenstein. This is about Dracula, but some say he passed on it. Some say that no, they didn't want Bela because they didn't want him. They wanted someone else. So that, and pretty much after Dracula, they kind of shit on Bela Lugosi. I'm not talking about in the futures, but it seemed like Universal's like, well, okay, he played Dracula, but he can only play Dracula. You know, he's good for Dracula, but he's not Lon Chaney because he can't play anyone else but Dracula. So that's sort of the stigma that followed Bela Lugosi. And I want to check out more of this guy's films. I've heard a lot of good things on a film called The Black Cat. Again, I put a couple on my Amazon wish list. Like there's a Bela Lugosi collection. I'm mentioning this for people who are fans of Bela Lugosi and you want to find more of his movies. These are the only ones I could find. There's a Bela Lugosi collection that has The Black Cat, The Raven, The Invisible Ray, some of the films that he did with Boris Karloff. There's also another pack which has some of the lesser films that he did, um, especially later in his career. But I'm interested in seeing them. I know my friend, good guy Dustin, sent me Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn Gorilla. So unfortunately, that and Abbott Costello Me Frankenstein. I have Abbott Costello Me Frankenstein. I have that Gorilla one and this one. I want to get more Bela Lugosi films because I really enjoyed him in this movie. I really enjoyed him. I do. For me, he is the best Dracula. I really enjoyed the Dracula and the Monster Squad. Bram Stoker's Dracula, I haven't seen in forever. I haven't seen that film in more than a decade. I don't own the film. I have many films to get to this month, so I'm not reviewing the film this month. Who knows? If I ever find it cheap enough to pick it up, I'll give it another watch and we'll see. But as of right now, Bela Lugosi made this film. And in case you're wondering the features, there is a Spanish version, which I guess I'll get into that. Uh, And before, like I said, Carl Laemmle Jr. really wanted to do horror, and he helped get this made. And I thought Tod Browning did a good job as well as Bela Lugosi. But anyway, the Spanish version, the reason that came about is this is sort of the first supernatural talkie, and not all the theaters had sound. So you had some theaters that actually had a silent version of Dracula. But also they had business in other countries, especially Latin America. And they didn't want to do dubbing either because it was cheating or because the dubbing wasn't really up to snuff. So they thought, okay, how about we make a second film at the same time? So the people who made Dracula would film during the day, and then another crew would film a Spanish version with their own actors at night. And I know there's a lot of people who actually say that the Spanish version is technically a better movie than the English version. And real quick, like, before I get back to this, I did see the Spanish version. One thing, weirdly enough, it's like 30 minutes longer, because this is an hour and 15 minutes. That one is like an hour and 40-some minutes. I don't know why it's 30 minutes longer. It didn't need to be 30 minutes longer. I will say, though, there are some interesting technical notes in that film, which when I get through the film, I'll mention them. But at the end of the day, I would say I still like this version better. And I'm trying to think. Trying to think of anything else about the backstory. I mean, the thing is, okay, for the features, like there's Spanish version, there's The Road to Dracula, which quite a bit of it talks a bit about the Bram Stoker and the play and getting it made into a movie. Lon Chaney, who he was going to be in it. Dracula the Restoration is a little bit on restoring the film. Monster Tracks is a trivia track. Dracula Archives, that's showing the pictures of the posters. Alternate score by Philip Glass, performed by the Kronos Quartet. Fuck that score. Because, really enough, this film and Frankenstein and I think The Mummy, if I remember correctly, I'll be honest, I haven't seen Invisible Man yet. But a couple of these films, they had no music except maybe a little bit at the beginning, and then if there's a theater playing, there's music. But the rest of it, there's no music. And actually, I'll get into it, but it actually made it a little bit more interesting with no music for me. Because it's something you never see nowadays. And that's what's interesting looking at these films is they would never make these movies nowadays. They could never make these movies nowadays. Even if they tried, they would fuck it up because of the picture quality. Because what, no music and things actually being quiet. And sometimes you can take your time and actual have adult actors because there are some actors other than Bela Lugosi I like. For example, Dwight Frye, Edward Van Sloan. I'll get to those guys, but anyway, you can never make a movie like this again. So it was interesting. But the score that Philip Glass and them put in, it's an alternate score you can listen to. I hated it. I hated the score. You can listen on YouTube if you want. Because to me, it was overbearing. It was so big. Like violins and all this shit playing. Like if it was a Phantom of the Opera movie. Like if it was uh, an epic movie. It's Gone with the Wind Part 2. And I'm like, this is not a big movie. Really, it's not. It's not a big movie. When you watch the film, it doesn't fit. It's like today, if you took the score for Lord of the Rings and you put it in, a comedy or something. Just no, that's not the best way to put it. If you took like a score from Lord of the Rings and you put it in, I'm trying to think of a smaller film that came out this year. I can't think of it. I can't think of it. I can't. It's kind of like how it's gonna sound stupid, but like the score for First Blood. Like I'm a Rambo fan, of course, Rambo Ride for Life. The score for First Blood works for that movie, but I don't think you could put that score in a Rambo 2. That's why it's not the exact copy. Rambo 2, it's a bigger score, but I don't think you could fit that score in the First Blood. Because First Blood is a little bit of a smaller movie, a little bit more of an intimate movie. And yes, I did say intimate movie for First Blood. But the score just did not fit. That's why I thought the score was terrible. That's why I'm fine with the way the film naturally is. Uh, you have two commentaries, including one, the screenwriter of Dracula Dead and Loving It, Steve Haberman, and I do enjoy Dracula Dead and Loving It. I actually really enjoy that film with Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks. That's actually a very fun movie. But yeah, two commentary tracks. Uh, I really enjoy this one, Lugosi, The Dark Prince. It's about 35 to 37 minute little biography on Bela Lugosi. Really interesting stuff. So really interesting features. But I know I haven't talked about the film. Uh, okay, I'm going to go in depth on the film, but before I do, I'm going to give a quick recap on. I like this film. I do like Dracula. I don't like it as much as Frankenstein or Bride of Frankenstein. I haven't seen The Invisible Man yet. I can say I do like it more than The Mummy. I do like it more than this Phantom of the Opera from the 40s with Claude Rains. Uh, I haven't seen the Hammer films, so I can't comment on those Dracula films and the Hammer movies. I like the film, but it's not perfect. And before I get more in depth into it, what do I like about it? I think Bela Lugosi did a great job. That's why I want to see as many films that he did as possible. Uh, I thought he was great. I thought his line delivery. I love that he took it seriously and he just went for it. I really enjoy that. I can't even do a Bela Lugosi, so I'm gonna do my own version. I'm Dracula. Listen to them, the children in the night. What music they make. I know Bela Lugosi doesn't sound like that, but I can't do a Hungarian accent. I'm from fucking Iowa. People from Iowa cannot do Hungarian accents. Well, I'll speak for myself. I can't do a Hungarian accent, but I thought Bela Lugosi was great. He is my favorite Dracula, especially after watching this again. The supporting actors, I do think Dwight Frye, who plays Renfield, the guy who goes to see him at the beginning, but then he gets turned to being pretty much Dracula's slave, who's really into bugs and spiders and flies and has a laugh. I thought he did a good job as Renfield. You also see him as Fritz, the hunchback assistant in Frankenstein. I thought Edward Van Sloan did a really good job as Van Helsing. He had a stature to him. You could believe that he could be a worthy foe for Dracula. I thought he did a really good job. I thought the film has some really good lighting. I think it has some great mood to it. It's a very moody, some really good lighting, and there's some really good shots. Like Dracula staring, you have these lights by his eyes. Or the first time you see Dracula, he's just standing there with that, that look on his face. Or even when after he turns Renfield, they're on the ship going to England, and when people find the bodies, it's just you see a shadow of a guy hanging onto the wheel, dead. I like this scene, that shadow. And they open this bottom, and there's Renfield just staring up, laughing like a maniac. And it's like, yeah, you see that, you think this guy's crazy too. So there's certain shots that I really do enjoy. There's certain shots that I enjoy. Those actors I enjoy. It's not too long of a film. The mood, the lighting, atmosphere, really good. I do have problems with it though. It's mainly three problems. First off, I don't care for the Mina and Harker characters, David Manners and Helen Chandler. I thought they were terrible, especially Helen Chandler. I thought she was horrible as Mina. I thought she was horrible. I thought she was annoying. I thought she was irritating. I thought she couldn't act her way out of a fucking paper bag. I thought she was... What the fuck does that even mean, act like a paper bag? I say that a few times. I know other people. What the hell does that even mean, out of a paper bag? Why the fuck would you be put in a paper bag, and how do you act out of it? Okay, this fucking door over here acts better than her. That's all I'll say. This fucking... There's a better actress than this girl. I know I'm being harsh, but I thought she was terrible. I didn't buy a single bit of her line delivery. I thought she sucked. Fucking tits. And also the guy, David Manners, he was a whole bowl of nothing. So those two who were sort of the younger lovers, and Mina's the girl that Dracula wants to turn, and was supposed to, oh no, he might turn her and for good. And it's like, I don't care if she lives or dies. So that's one problem. I didn't like them as actors. I thought they were phony. They're as fake as a $3 bill. Second thing I didn't care for is there's certain stuff that feels like it's missing. Whether they come out of the script or whatever, it feels like there's stuff that's missing. Or stuff, I'm not saying I need explanations on everything, but still, for example, Dracula has 3 brides in Transylvania. He goes to England. You never see those 3 brides again. What happened to those 3 brides? I mean, Dracula dies at the end. Just hear Van Helsing putting the stake in, and Dracula, So those 3 brides, are they kicking it back in Transylvania? I know there's a sequel called Dracula's Daughter. I haven't seen it. I've seen a trailer for it. But what happened to those 3 women? Those 3 brides. They're just hanging out in Dracula's place in Transylvania. Because you never see them again. You see them for a little bit, and then they, never again. There's a moment where a maid faints, and Renfield walks creepily towards her, and then it cuts. Now in the Spanish version, that goes a little bit further. You realize he just wants a fly that's near her. But here it cuts away, and then never mentions it again. I think you do see the maid again, so you know she's not dead. But it's like there was a weird cut. Another example is little stuff like when Renfield gets at the beginning of the film, he needs a carriage. There's Bela Lugosi, who's going to take him. Now Renfield sees his face, and when he gets there, I like the idea that, hey, driver, stop, and there's no one there, and the door opens, he goes in, and he sees Dracula. Now he just sees Dracula's face, and hey, that's the same face as the guy on the carriage. He never puts 2 and 2 together. I will say in the Spanish version, they made a little bit more sense because the guy had half his face covered when he was driving the carriage. The Dracula in that movie. Uh, there's a woman that he bites called Lucy. And then later in the film, they mention, oh, there's this woman in white going around. And all that happens is that Professor Van Helsing's talking to Mina, and he's like, hey, what did you see? She tells him what she saw, and he's like, don't worry, after tonight, she'll be taken care of. And that's the last you hear about Lucy. And throughout the film, I'm like, well, when are you going to take care of Lucy? When did they take care of her? I believe that was in the script. I remember it's a Dracula Dead and Loving It because I remember the scene with Steven Weber hitting in blood on his face. That always made me chuckle. But it's never brought up again. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What's the deal with that? And then even the very end, after he kills, Van Helsing kills Dracula, he tells the girl and her hubby, fiance, you go ahead, I'll stay here, I'll stay behind. And then you see those two leave in the end credits. I'm like, why did Van Helsing stay behind? Now, granted, from what I understand, in Dracula's Daughter, it takes place like a couple moments and he meets up with the police. But watching just this film, it doesn't explain why is Van Helsing staying behind. Take Dracula's Daughter out of the picture. Oh, he's staying behind because some cops are coming. How the fuck are cops coming? How the fuck do they even know they're there? In this movie, it doesn't explain why Van Helsing stays behind. That's what I'm talking about. There's stuff that doesn't make sense or isn't explained or isn't followed through. Which is in my third main issue with the film. The ending is lame. It's anticlimactic. Because all it is Dracula has Mina. They follow Renfield. Renfield gets to his master. Van Helsing and Harker follow Renfield. Dracula kills Renfield, pushing him down, grabbing him, throwing him down the stairs. Runs off with Mina. They follow. And then pretty much like a minute later, they can't find Mina, and Van Helsing just opens a coffin. There's Dracula. And I'm like, Dracula's is a fucking idiot. He's a fucking moron. He knows these two guys, including Van Helsing, which he himself said is a worthy foe. He didn't say it is that word, worthy foe, but you get the idea. And he just decides to go in a coffin. I'm like, why don't you try to kill these two guys? Why don't you try to hunt them down? Why don't you try to control Harker or use Mina to attack them or do something? I mean, and it does. You can't say, well, the sun's coming out because they don't establish that the sun's coming out. They don't establish that. Which I think they did do that a little bit in the Spanish version. So it's because the Spanish version, what they would do is they would watch the dailies of the English version, and then it's like, hey, we could do better than that. And I think that's why some people like the Spanish version better, because it still made some of those mistakes, but it tried to do some little stuff. But I like this version better because I like Bela Lugosi kissed the shit out of the Dracula Spanish version, and plus it's 30 minutes longer, but not to satisfy all the criteria I've been complaining about. Believe me. But yet the ending is very anticlimactic. It's just, oh, there's Dracula, Van Helsing has a stake, and then you just hear pum pum pum, and Bela Lugosi go, oh, and then it's over, and they find Mina, and she's out of the spell, and it's very anticlimactic. Now compare that to the next movie, Frankenstein, where it's torches of the villagers, and they chase the monster, and the monster has Frankenstein. They go to the top in the struggle, and he throws Frankenstein, who hits this windmill so that he doesn't completely die, and they burn the place down, and Frankenstein monster is in this windmill that's completely on fire. It has more of an ending than this film. This film kind of just ends on a whimper, very anticlimactic. I think that's a big issue with the movie. So I do like the film, but those three issues I mentioned, uh, Helen Chandler and David Manners were a pile of nothing. Stuff that isn't explained, like the woman in white, Lucy. When the hell did Van Helsing or Harker or both take care of her? Or they have Renfield going after this maid, but you have to watch the Spanish version to realize, oh, he's getting a fly. Here it's like, what? What happened to his three brides at the beginning of the film? I guess they just decided to chill out in Transylvania. But again, so I don't think this film is perfect, but I still like the film. I like, again, the opening. I like the little piece of music they play. Da, 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 da. Shit, I'm doing a shisha. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. Ba, da, 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 da. That and one other piece of music is in the film. Again, I like the fact that there's no music in this film. I think some people will be bothered by it, but it didn't bother me. It made it more interesting because again, you'll never see that kind of thing again. I love music. I love music in movies. I love soundtracks and scores. But first off, a lot of scores suck nowadays, as do soundtracks. Second off, when was the last time you saw a movie that had no score? Exactly. You could never make this kind of film again. Even the film quality, like I said before, it'd be too smooth or too digital, too this, too that. You people wouldn't even be able to replicate it. And pretty much, like I said, you have these nice sort of paintings in the background, like in the first shot, and you actually have Carl Lamley's niece, I believe, say the first lines of dialogue in the film. And like I said, Dwight Frye, I think he does a really good job as Renfield. He wants to go up to Castle Dracula for some business. People warn him. Someone even gives him a cross necklace. He's like, I have to go with business, and yeah, you guys are superstitious, but he's not a dick about it. So he goes off to another carriage, which I will say, again, the Spanish version does some interesting things. Like, for example, in this sequence when he's going to meet the other carriage, like, they go by this like, little pit of fire that's, like, right here in the background in the Spanish version. It's like the carriage is on the road, and there's, like, this small fire pit, which made the scene a little bit more interesting, I will admit. So I think that's why, again, people say technically better film. But 30 minutes longer, and I have no idea why, because, again, it's not for the issues I was talking about. And the acting, I thought, wasn't that great, especially the guy who played Dracula in the Spanish version was horrible. But, again, you see Bela's face, Bela Lugosi's face, when he drives to this other carriage. And why Renfield doesn't recognize that later, I have no idea. Again, in the Spanish version, the guy who played Dracula covered like this part of his face. That would have made more sense. But still, I like the atmosphere Tod Browning has, the atmosphere, the mood, the lighting. Again, they can't recapture this nowadays. They can't. And if they tried, they'd suck at it. So I really like just the mood, the atmosphere, the feeling. I like the idea that there's no music. Made it a bit different viewing, different watching experience. Made it interesting. And they get to Dracula's place. Like I said, I like the idea that Renfield comes out. Hey, driver, what are you doing? And then there's no driver there. And the door opens, he comes in. And another interesting thing they do in the Spanish version, when Dracula appears, the camera actually moves slowly in one shot up the steps, which is interesting. But the stupid thing is Dracula looks like a goofball because he's just standing there going like holding this thing like in a pose as the whole thing comes up. He's just standing there like a candle like this, as if he's taking a fucking Kodak. Like someone has a fucking Kodak moment for him. Yes. So I thought the way he stood looked fucking goofy. So I was fine with Bela Lugosi just coming down the stairs. And just again, I love Bela Lugosi's line delivery. And oh yeah, before I mention that, the first time you see Dracula, his hand come out of the coffin. You have the women come out of the coffin. Even little things like this little weird looking bug coming out, and like these, I don't know if armadillos or such coming out. Yeah, I don't know if there's armadillos in Transylvania. I know, but fuck, I don't care. I don't care about that. It was made it interesting, made the environment interesting. The sets look great. The set locations and they look great. And you know, I'm fine. Again, I don't hate black and white movies. I like this movie. Most of these movies are black and white, and I'm liking them so far. At least most of them. But and then the first time you see Bela Lugosi just stood up and just that weird ass stare. It's like ooh shit. Like there's a presence to him. That's the thing with Bela Lugosi. There's a presence to him. And at the end of this scene, I like the idea that there's this gigantic spider web, and Bela Lugosi is walking to it, and Renfield looks away and looks back, and Bela Lugosi is on the other side. And he's like, well, how the hell did that happen? And then he has to wipe it off himself. And of course, I mean, the lines of dialogue, I am Dracula. Uh, and he hears howlings. Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make. Again, I can't do Bela Lugosi. I'm just doing my own version of it. Uh, But I love the way they lit Bela Lugosi as well. When they have his look and have like these light under his eyes, and when the guy cuts himself and Bela Lugosi looks at it and does this and then goes away, then offers him wine. I said, "Well, don't you want some?" He said, "I never drink wine." I just I really enjoyed watching them. And I really enjoyed watching them. And then pretty much when Renfield gets drugged, the three brides are going to get him, but Dracula's like, back. He doesn't say it, but he says back, and he gets Renfield for his own. And like I said, they go on the ship to England. Renfield's like, master, master, now is the time, and he comes up. I will say this is another thing that's a little bit more interesting in the Spanish version, because when like it's raining and storming out, and then when Bela Lugosi goes outside, you see no water, no rain on him. By the Spanish version, you see Dracula come out and it's still raging with water, and then you just see Renfield in a porthole screaming like a madman, ah, but not annoying like screaming like a madman. I thought that was a little bit more interesting shot in the Spanish version. So I do give some props to the Spanish version, but again, I prefer this version because I thought the acting was better, at least by Bela Lugosi, Dwight Fry, and Edward Van Sloan. And it was a shorter film. The Spanish version didn't need to be 30 minutes longer. At least the way it was on here was 30 minutes longer. But again, like I said, I like that shot of the guy hanging on the wheel, and you see the shadow, and people find the body, and then they find Renfield just staring up like that. I like that shot. Bela Lugosi's character kills one girl, and he goes to the theater. I like some of the lines of dialogue, like they're talking about death, and Bela Lugosi says something like, "There are far worse. What was it? There are far worse awaiting man than death." I can't do it. But anyway, that's where he preys on the Lucy character, and again, the woman in white. You hear that later on, and they never follow up on that really. I mean, again, Van Helsing says that he'll take care of it, but you never see him take care of it. But and at this time, Renfield is at this asylum. Who's always talking about, he gets mad and then sad when this guy takes away his spider, which I thought that made me chuckle a bit. And again, Edward Van Sloan made a great Van Helsing. He had a stature to him, but he was a kind man. He was a gentle man, but he had stature to him. When they had face off, and when I mean face off, I mean like little conversations with Dracula, it was, I thought, really good. For example, Dracula is talking with these other guests, and Van Helsing looks at this mirror, and he sees that there's no reflection, then shows the mirror to Lugosi, who slams it, and he's in anger. And I think Lugosi says a line like, "For a man that hasn't lived uh, a single decade, what is it? For a man that hasn't even lived a single lifetime, you're a very wise man, Van Helsing." I know I'm doing a shitty job if I. And pretty much, the rest of the film is Mina's been bitten. They're trying to protect Mina. Van Helsing, he has these, was it Wolf's Bane? That's not how you, I don't think that's the way you say Wolf's Bane. Fuck, I forgot what it was. I forgot what the hell it was called. But, uh, just little moments that, like, for example, Dracula and Van Helsing. There's another scene where he tries to hypnotize Van Helsing. Van Helsing fights it off. He's like, "Your will is strong, Van Helsing." And Van Helsing pulls off a cross, which gets Dracula off his back. Um, but then, like I say, there's a lot of good stuff with the sets, the mood, the lighting, certain shots of Dracula with the lighting on his eyes. I think Bela Lugosi does a great job. Eric Van Sloan, Dwight Fry as Renfield. But the ending is rather lame. It's just, like I said, Renfield, and they follow Renfield. Dracula has Mina. Dracula throws Renfield down the stairs. They follow Dracula, and then all of a sudden Dracula's in his coffin. Like, a movie that did that better? Fright Night. It did. Because it wasn't, he got back into his coffin, and they try to stab him, but you have this actual fight, and you have this battle, and granted, I know you probably couldn't do a lot of that in 1931, not only with budget, but with what you can get away with. I mean, hell, if you showed too much skin, they would be pissed. If you mentioned God, they would be pissed. So things were really different in 1931. So I understand that, but I do think you could have done a bit more. I mean, even just the point of showing Dracula go to dust, or even I haven't seen Nosferatu, but I've seen clips of it, and I remember a clip like he's the ray sunshine, and he like disappears. Even that's a little bit more than this. I haven't seen Nosferatu. That's another one. Either version. The Klaus Kinski or the original. Again, I'd like to pick those up one day and check those out. But when I win the lottery, I'll do that. But yeah, I do think the ending hurts the film, as well as the two younger actors, which I think from hearing they didn't take the film seriously, which shows. But I know they said Bela Lugosi took it very seriously, which shows. Again, let's face it, Bela Lugosi is the movie. Without Bela Lugosi, this wouldn't be anything. Bela Lugosi made this his own. He did a great job. I love the mood, the lighting. I even like the idea there's no music. Just made it an interesting watch. And it's not that long of a film. Again, it's an hour and 15 minutes, but it does drag a little bit. I will say it does drag a little bit at times. But again, the atmosphere, the mood, the lighting, Bela Lugosi, Eric Van Sloan, Dwight Fry. I like the film for that. And I can say I like this more than The Mummy or the 40s Phantom of the Opera. I would put The Wolfman over this. I would put Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein over this. I would put, I haven't seen The Invisible Man, but I'm sure I'd put that over this. I don't know, maybe, we'll see, probably. But yeah, I mean, I think it's better than The Mummy. I think it's better than the 40s Phantom of the Opera. But yeah, Dracula, I still like. I have problems with the film, but at the end of the day, I still like the film. So thanks for watching this 44-minute review. I didn't know it'd be that long. But next up will be Frankenstein. Frankenstein. Which could be my favorite of the Universal Monster movies. Have to think about that. Could be my favorite, but Frankenstein. With Boris Karloff. Either way, thanks for watching, take care, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.